Good afternoon. Welcome to this session of the Caribbean Urban Forum 2022. Happy to have you in this session. And on behalf of the Inter-American Development Bank, we welcome you and we appreciate your participation. The bank is a proud sponsor of all the Caribbean Urban Forums, and we have been a partner for a long time, and we hope to continue being for the foreseeable future. Today, we have a topic which is very dear to our Caribbean audience, and it's an emerging approach and investment project approach that it's growing in the Caribbean, which is how to leverage heritage as an engine, as a driver of local economic development. The issue of local heritage has been gaining a momentum because heritage is an important answer to local economic development through the cultural industries, or as referred to as the orange economy in cities. It is also a catalyst for social inclusion and job creation in cities. So lately, in all over the world, heritage cities have increased or have gained momentum in terms of moving from the passive use of heritage to the active integration of heritage assets into the mainstream of the local economy and into important urban economic and social policies. To speak about this, today we have a deluxe panel. We have 4 presenters. First, we will have a presentation on an introduction, a framing introduction on the issue by our colleague from Trinidad and Tobago, Joseph Bertrand. Following him will be Robin Rajak, speaking about the experience of Barbados in this regard, followed by Ronald Brown from the Urban Development Corporation of Jamaica. And last but not least, our colleague, IDB colleague Tatiana Koppelman, will tell us about the case of an Andean city, Trujillo in Peru, which is a very successful case of reference on heritage utilization, living heritage integration. So in order to make use of the lost time, I observe all prior protocols, and I ask you to suppress your silence, your cell phones, in order allow for a clear communication. And in the following minutes, we will have this exchange, and we will be turning on and off our cameras and microphones to allow the presenters to fully deliver these important and rich presentations that we prepared for you today. So to start the conversation, I will give the floor to Joseph to tell us about the importance and relevance of looking at heritage as a driver of urban development, social development, and economic development. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and a pleasant good day to everyone, all online and all those in the physical space. My name is.
We cannot hear you, Joseph. If you can turn on your microphone, please.
It is. Hello, check 1, 2. You hear me? Hello? Yeah. All right, great. So again, thank you very much. And welcome to all those who are in the physical space and our online space. Now we're looking at the idea of heritage, heritage preservation. I am Joseph Bertrand, coming from Trinidad and Tobago, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, and just want to kind of frame the understanding of heritage in terms of the economic drivers. When we think of heritage, generally it is things of the past, things that have gone, and things that kind of link us to each other or together with each other. But the business of economics isn't really one of the first things that we think about. So I am very happy to be part of this discussion because it is very rich in this particular vein. So, in understanding the framework that the IDB Living Heritage has put together, it looks at the potential of urban cultural heritage through 5 lenses. The first being productivity, inclusion, co-efficiency, collaboration, and resilience. So, in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, we are a multicultural society. We have several different languages, several different cultures that operate in the same space. And we at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago tend to reach out to these various communities and create business opportunities in terms of the tours and events that we may have within the space. So, for example, Lopino, this is a community up in the northern range of our country. Productivity, there's a Lopino Heritage Committee and several other economic activities happen in and around this space, like there's a Cafe Mariposa and our National Trust tours. The understanding of the sociocultural facts that happen within this space, the first peoples, French influence, the African influence, the Indian indentureship, the cocoa payol, plenty of various groups that find themselves within this space. So there's a lot of inclusion within the understandings of eco-efficiency within that same space. It is generally untapped at this time, but there's a lot of work that could be done. And when we listen to the presentations to come, I want you to start to think about your own territory in terms of this whole business of heritage conversations, all right? Collaborations with the National Trust, they collaborate with the RISE program. This is reimagining sites of African enslavement, the Emancipation Support Committee as well. And in terms of resilience, looking at preserving language. So there is the first tongue of Trinidad, which is English, but we're moving into an understanding of Spanish. And it is encapsulated within the community through cultural heritage, like Parang is a indigenous music within the territory of Trinidad and Tobago, and the maintenance of the heritage sites. So as we continue on, we now move into another community, which is situated a little further up into the hills of the northern range, Paramin. And Paramin has another dynamic on its own in terms of the French Creole. So there is the whole idea of planting and farming up there. You get a lot of beautiful seasoning and so on. And all this in terms of the cultural retention. You have your patois that continues to remain so strong within the community, preserving the language, preserving the indigenous methods of planting and so on. And all of this is ideas that we can look at in terms of this whole preservation, and then from there, creating an economic opportunity for the people within the communities. So at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, we are a membership-based organization looking at the specifics of heritage and heritage preservation from as young as say 3, 4 all the way up to our senior citizens. So part of the program that we have created is the youth outreach, right? And this program is called the Heritage Keepers Program. And this takes our young people who are in the online space from the online into the offline to have real experiences with the heritage sites and have real conversations on the heritage preservation. So just one of the highlights of the program, we were able to work with the Scout Association and develop a heritage badge, a national heritage badge that the children work towards and proudly wear on their chests today. So it's a lot of fantastic opportunities. Now, in terms of the economic understandings and the economic drivers, when we take persons into a community on a tour, for example, or on for an event or for a cultural event, we would engage the community members themselves. So they would be the ones to provide the food, they would be the ones to provide transport, special transport if needed, and to facilitate the group that we bring down into the community. So there is that level of exchange also. Very small, but the opportunities are there. So in looking at the governmental level, the Ministry of Planning and Development, of which we fall under, has a wonderful drive in terms of creating avenues for job creation, in terms of understanding the value of our heritage. So again, in looking at one last community would be Maruga. This is down south, this time, southern end of Trinidad and Tobago. And looking at through the lens of the framework, productivity, inclusion, co-efficiency, collaborations and resilience, the tours and events down there, the inclusion would be American heritage, collaborations with the United Nations, the National Trust, and resilience of folklore retentions, Orisha, Ifa, and spiritual development happens down on that side, the independent Baptist traditions. All of these things are in and around the community. So being able to harness those things, understand them, and then respectfully package and be able to sell on an economic level. So as we listen to the various presentations to come, think about your own communities, think about your own territory in this understanding of the framework to see how best we can make heritage work for our people. So thank you very much. And I pass you back over to our illustrious host.
Thank you, Joseph. In the aim of moving fast, I forgot to introduce you, so I will do that now. Joseph Bertrand is an education and outreach officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. He is a heritage and cultural enthusiast with his first degree in Carnival Studies Festival Management. And his role is and function are to find creative ways to involve the public in heritage preservation conservation. Focusing on the youth, the Heritage Keepers program was developed to engage youth especially. So he has an active role in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean in terms of mainstreaming heritage into the local economic development discussion. Now, moving on to Barbados, which is our host of the Caribbean Urban Forum this year. We have the pleasure of listening to Robin Rajak. Robin is a lead specialist for housing and urban development at the Inter-American Development Bank. Since 2014, he has engaged in operations, research, and policy dialogues and an emerging program on metropolitan governance region-wide. He has worked in housing, urban development, land management for over 2.5 decades in a variety of roles, including national government, international development agencies, and research. Before joining the IDB, Robin worked for the World Bank, with a focus on South Asia and Latin America. He also formerly served as a founding director of the Land Settlement Agency in Trinidad and Tobago. Robin holds a PhD and Master of Philosophy in Land Economics from the University of Cambridge and the Bachelor's in Land Surveying Engineering from the University of West Indies. He will present the case of Speightstown in Barbados. I apologize for the pronunciations of names and places that I may not pronounce properly. So to speak about Speightstown, Barbados, Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alberto. I like the descriptor of enthusiast for Joseph. I think clearly it's a man doing the right job. I'm going to refer to the case of Speightstown in Barbados as applied to a methodology that the IDB developed a few years ago for trying to be a little more systematic in the way we think about the function of cultural heritage and the pathways to its preservation and contribution to towns and cities in the Caribbean. In fact, more broadly, but in the last iteration of the program that has had 2 iterations so far, of the 6 case studies, we had 2 in the Caribbean, and you'll hear about both of them today. I'm not going to introduce Barbados to those of us who are here. This slide was more for an international audience. But the thing that you would know if you live here, or if you visited from time to time, compared to the other 3 towns or city, the other city and 2 towns in this country, Speightstown is synonymous with charm. When people think of it, the architecture, the vernacular, charm is what comes to mind. It was at one point a bustling city in the early days, a lot of trade with England in particular. In fact, it's nicknamed Little Bristol. Not just the industry that contributed, in fact, the trade industry and the maritime industry was in fact at one point the biggest contributor, not just the actual product of sugar, tobacco, and other things. It was also a strategic military defense location to protect the town against invasion. When it finally was invaded, it was in Oistins, having failed in Speightstown. No indictment against the people of Oistins. Topography plays a big role in that. This town is also twinned with Charleston in South Carolina. And in fact, there's an interesting history there of reverse colonization, if you would like, or inhabitation, where people who left Barbados and basically colonized or populated Charleston. That's another story for another day. And painting from some time back, the early 1900s, but I need my glasses here. And this map of the West Coast basically shows and highlights, this is the West Coast around Speightstown, in Speightstown, and what we call our area of intervention or study area is what is highlighted by the dotted line. And you would see named the variety of places of some historic significance. The ones that are in yellow are of more significant heritage status, but some of the others there have been around for a long while. The first question we try to understand when we look at a town or city from a heritage perspective, especially a historic town, is whether heritage is underutilized. And we have a number of metrics for this, but one of the more common sense ones is that of the number of heritage structures within the study area, how many are currently in use? And by use, we often mean adaptive reuse. And in the case of Speightstown, within that area of intervention, the dotted line I was showing you a few minutes ago, about 2/3 are currently in use. We also did a public perception survey via one of the cell phone providers about a year ago and got about 1,200 responses, I think, about people's perception of the town, potential for urban regeneration, its heritage, etc. And about 14% of respondents indicated that they liked the town, but that its heritage and infrastructure needed better protection and maintenance. That theme repeated in other questions. It's difficult to know exactly how people think from a single question. But what heritage are they talking about? They're talking about some of these structures and buildings that you can see there These are obviously part of what we, in our classification, we call tangible heritage. Other organizations will have a similar name, but we're talking about built things, buildings and infrastructure with some historic significance. So here are some infrastructure obviously related to its defense history, but also natural heritage. And again, this is intuitive. We're just using three categorizations, in this case, referring to obviously forested areas, trails, and most obviously in the case of Spicetown, the coastline. But interestingly enough, a waterway, and Barbados is not famous for rivers, in what is called the salt pond, a big mixture of fresh and saline water. And then the last category of heritage, the way we think about it, from the tangible to the natural and then to the intangible, which is more to do with the culture of the place, the people of the place, what they traditionally do, how they traditionally express themselves, but not just how they express themselves for show. How do they survive? How have they survived historically? What industries have been significant in the industry? And of course, in the town, and in this case, fishing has had a long history and remains. We're a little bit artificial in defining Spicetown, because just to the north of it is another settlement. Somebody remind me, please. Six Pence, okay? Where apparently the real fish is, but that's another story. We had a number of challenges faced in trying to implement the framework, which is a methodology with a number of standardized indicators, whatnot, especially in the context of COVID. But I don't want to blame COVID only. I think one of the challenges we found across the board in implementing this methodology, which was a lot of based on indicators, we have done that before, is the absence of systematic data. We tried it still because we wanted to see how easily that data could be compiled in the space of a few months. In some cases, we succeeded, and in others, there was just no feedback or response from the agencies that we had hoped to get some of that insight. And that's part of the reason we did a public perception survey and got about 1,200 responses, which is not bad for a town that hosts 3,000 people, 3,500 people. Importantly, in that survey, we're asking people nationally. We can with these, and this is an important note, with these cell phone surveys, it's very useful in the sense that cell phone service is moderated through towers. So you can literally, as we've done in other studies, ping particular towers at night and capture people who are resident in those locations to get their sense of on a particular topic. In this case, we thought this is a national asset. We don't want to just know, as important as it is to know what people of Spicetown think about the town, the town is only going to survive and thrive if people from outside of it see it as a viable product, an enjoyable experience. And so we needed to understand what they had to say. Joseph referred to the 5 aspects of our framework. I'm not here to defend every aspect. I think it could be collapsed into 4. For example, eco-efficiency and resilience are very related themes. But importantly, when we think about heritage and how it functions in a town, we ought to be asking ourselves not just about, is it contributing economically, but we should be asking, is that product accessible from an inclusive perspective? Is there evidence of strong collaboration in the management of the product and of the place? And of course, issues of resilience and eco-efficiency being adequately attended to. Because you may be doing a good job on any one of those fronts, but a more holistic understanding would require you to think about all of these. And in particular about the productive side of it, because in the absence of the town performing well as an economy, everything else falls, because that's the basis of our urban settlements, right? First and foremost, they're economic agglomerations, and then we have a lot of other dynamics that go with it. But once the economic side falls, we have seen time and again around the world that everything else usually begins to buckle. So the first thing to note is that in our analysis of available data, and just speaking to members of the Spicetown Task Force and interviewing long-standing residents, and of course from the survey as well, it's clear that there's not a lot of cost barrier to accessing the product that is Spicetown. Entrance fees for the few festivals that are there, the museum is when it was open, it's recently been renovated. It's accessible from a cost perspective. The products that are on sale are not exorbitantly priced. They are local. There are very high cost restaurants there, one or two, and then there are some that are much more affordable. So inclusivity from a point of view of cost barrier is not a factor, whereas in some historic towns, it clearly is. Another way of looking at inclusivity is the extent to which is gentrification going on. And I think we have a bit of a mixed story here, and I see Raymond in the audience will know better than I, but you can't buy any prime real estate in Spicetown today because of the price. When the few properties that are up there for sale that are with nice views are very exorbitantly priced. But at the same time, there are a lot of long-standing local residents just off the high street, off of the main street. And therefore, it's not evident that these people have been displaced or there's a lot of pressure to displace them. So we have this dual harmony of a town with some unique attributes that is reinforcing real estate value, but at the same time, not displacing up to this point, long-standing residents. The other aspect of inclusivity is how safe you feel when you get there. And that's a question we directly polled people in the cell phone survey. And you will find from the next graph that by and large, people feel very safe or safe there, the largest columns in this chart. Very few people feel unsafe in this particular town. That again is something that distinguishes it from some of the other towns and cities that are competing for heritage attractions in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have some rich history in Latin America, but some of it is not accessible or inclusive from the point of view of the experience of urban crime. The dominant sense that we got when we asked people about their overall, if you could capture it in one statement about the town, a dominant sense is that the public likes the town, but they want more from it. And another way of probing that is we asked them, well, have you ever participated in a festival in this heritage town? And we gave examples of how they could pick, and of course they can pick other, right down to the festival in the church, or the, crop over, or the Carmichael art exhibition that is there for a month, every year for the last 2 years. And only 1 in 3 had ever done so. So that tells you, and this is important for people who manage a town, who are thinking about the town, or any heritage town, to know. Because you may think, based on the people who are around you, yeah, I see them every year at that festival. But who are you not seeing? You're seeing many people who don't know about your product, don't know when it's on, and don't see it as enough of an experience to come. And that's 2/3 of the respondents. So this is, let me not ad-lib. So reinforcing that point, you see the tallest bar there as to what people would want to see more of in the town. Cultural and heritage events was most likely to attract them to explore the town. Motivation to visit more often. We found that 38%, nearly 40% nighttime opening of shops and restaurants and clubs. That's very rare there. Now there is Local and Company, a new very high-end restaurant there with local linkages. That's one of the few places that are open at night. More businesses and offices in the town, about 1/3 of people citing that. About 1/4 more cultural and sporting activities in the town. Another 1/4, people had an option to identify more than one thing. Better access and maintenance of the jetty, the beach, the waterfront. And to the government's credit, the jetty has recently been rehabilitated. But at the same time, and this is true of many of our heritage towns, it's a town whose heritage is under threat from underinvestment, flooding, and fire. Time is not our friend in heritage towns. And we see this as a flood zone map. I'm going to go quite quickly now because I know the time is short, but it just shows you in that previous graphic parts of the town that are under threat of flooding on different scenarios. This one, a fire about 2 years ago in one evening, taking out 2 heritage buildings and a third, one of the most vibrant local businesses, 111 East, but Juma's Supermarket and Archer's Hall both been severely damaged. Juma's been destroyed completely, and Archer's Hall, the former whaling building, warehouse building, being significantly damaged. even though we're literally next to the water. And that's something to think about. And we've begun to ask, well, why isn't there a parallel firefighting system to make use of the saline water in situations like this? We try to come up in this exercise with a shared vision using government's vision as documented in various reports, the vision of what a colleague of mine from Trinidad and Tobago refers to as the inputs, people who are been embedded in a place for a long period of time and usually have very good insight as to what is working and not working. And then the people's vision as captured from the survey. And out of that, we come up with particular lines of action. One is to expand the offering of cultural and recreational opportunities in and around the town. Again, we're basing this in part of these three pieces of evidence, but importantly, from what the public told us in the cell phone survey. I'm not going to go into the flagship projects in the interest of time, but just to outline this first one, here we're talking about arts, culture, and entertainment zone, and a particular area has been identified as a possibility. What we're doing with each of the flagship projects, and I've done so far, is a preliminary economic analysis of its value. Under what conditions would this proposal be viable? Under what, if you adjust the parameters a bit, the sensitivity of those, is it still viable? Does it still produce an economic return that is positive? This is a schematic of that first proposal, but again, the time doesn't allow us to go into it. I'm just giving you a gist of where we went with this after getting a sense of what might be the flagship projects. These are a couple other schematics I'm going to skip through. The second thing is to improve connectivity for potential visitors. And here, the logic is simple. You have a town of 3,500 people. There's no way it's going to thrive and survive economically based on the patronage of those people only, as important as their patronage and ownership is. You need, and it's also a fairly remote town by comparison to other locations in the country. So making those connections, particularly to locations where there's a lot of disposable income. The graphic on the left is showing you Port St. Charles, but there's another one, Port Ferdinand. These are resort communities just a couple of miles, if so much, north of Spice Town, walking distance, cycling distance, a lot of disposable income for those who visit, for whom those are second or third homes. And they are a key, ensuring that the ease and the enjoyment of access from there, including cycling and safe walking, is critical. But likewise from the south, from Old Town, where there are a lot of boutique hotels, and making use in particular of the waterway for small craft to access the town in a more fun way. So critical to this agenda is the refurbishment of the jetty, the last of the remaining jetties that was recently done by the government. And our argumentation here is that this is not a piece of marine infrastructure only. It must be seen as a piece of economic infrastructure to facilitate that which was I was just a minute ago referring to, in terms of bringing people from other parts. Couple of images of the refurbishment of the jetty. The third area was mitigating flooding, coastal erosion, and fire threats. And here the work has begun, but in particular, we're referring to the salt pond, that area of fresh and saline water. The government has already done substantive works in the last 6 months or so, last year, on this. We are proposing to go beyond what is done there in terms of not just improving its function from a drainage perspective, but its function as an eco product. In other words, connecting it better to the Wim Gully, which is from which it feeds, and therefore creating an opportunity for recreation tours and even light dining over the water. The last area is strengthening place-based governance. And this is where I conclude to say that our flagship project was to stimulate a discussion around the business improvement district concept. And we had some consultation with the Thorne Commission that was looking at local government reforms for the country at the same time. And the Member of Parliament, Mr. Thorne, has indicated that this work was help them to think about this more deliberately. In other words, who is looking after the venue, the place, as a product, as an experience, as opposed to who is thinking about water or sanitation or the jetty or local business. all in disjointed fashion. Fortunately, to some degree, the task force, the Spice Town task force, is comprised of long-standing residents and business owners from the community, is in de facto doing something along these lines. But it needs to go further. And the Business Improvement District is one such concept. We're hoping in the coming months to promote more discussion around that to see if we can get that level of ownership and management of their product. So people who come there, enjoy it, come back, and encourage others to come again. I'm going to stop on this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robin, for this very interesting case. There are three things I can say about this. One, the importance of looking at different dimensions, the 5 pillars of the living heritage methodology, looking at the place, at placemaking, not only from the physical heritage perspective, but to look at the culture, to look at the people, and that leads me to the second, to two bold statements. Number one, it is impressive to see that we have very underutilized assets when we look at heritage in a broad manner, and in the Caribbean, we need to really reveal these assets and put them to value, put them in place to generate livelihoods, to generate job opportunities, to generate life and better quality for foreigners, for visitors, but also for the residents. So only in that way we can make living heritage a successful experience. Number two, second bold statement is because we don't have historical data on many of these heritage locations, we have to go to new things, new ways of capturing the relevant information. I'm talking about big data, open data, metadata, drones, cell phones, different kinds of blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality. This is the trend that many heritage locations are going. They are saying, because we don't have a lot of historical data and so on, well, we produce a virtual and augmented reality experience. We replicate the place, we twin the place in the digital world, in something that is emerging, which is the metaverse, the meta universe, to generate expectations about the place, information about the place, and attractiveness of the heritage places. So something that is revealed in the case of Spice Town. Moving on to Port Royal, another interesting case of living heritage. I will introduce Ronald Brown, who is the director of development planning at UDC, the Urban Development Corporation in Jamaica. The Urban Development Corporation is the leading planning, development, and implementation agency in Jamaica and has a primary mandate of making development happen. Since joining the UDC in 2009, Ronald has overseen the preparation of 5 redevelopment plans for major urban centers to include downtown Kingston and Port Royal, the Caymanas State, Ocho Rios, Falmouth, and Montego Bay. Currently, he is leading a team that is re-engaging with the historic town of Port Royal, which is now the focus of new investment with the recent development of a port of call by the Port Authority of Jamaica. Ronald is also involved in the Kingston Harbor Walk project, which is intended to create a linear coastal pathway that will link the historic town to the commercial district of downtown Kingston. Ronald holds a master's degree in urban planning and land administration from the International Geoinformation Science and Earth Observation, ITC, in the Netherlands, and is also a graduate of the University of Technology of Jamaica. To talk about the interesting case of Port Royal and Kingston, Ronald, the floor is yours.
Sorry, let me start again. Thank you very much, Gilberto. It's really an honor to be a part of this discussion, also to serve on this in this forum with my fellow panelists. I mean, it was really interesting listening to Jack. There are certain commonalities that we have with that town that he described in Barbados, as well as Port Royal. So let me go into my presentation, and I'm hoping I will speak to those issues a bit more, or you will see for yourself those issues that are common to both.
We see you. We see your presentation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Port Royal was originally designed to serve as a defensive fortification and to guard for the entrance to the Kingston Harbor. But as we all know, it assumed a much greater importance. During its heyday, only Boston, Massachusetts reviled Port Royal in size and importance. And unfortunately, in 1692, a severe earthquake and tidal wave struck, and a large portion of the town was destroyed. What planning efforts, sustaining Port Royal, that is, will take lessons from several proposals we have looked at in the past and assess their viability, linking them to potential collaborations, meet one of the most important targets for us, which is UNESCO designation. Our efforts are guided by Vision 2030, the Jamaican National Development Plan, the SDG goals 11, 13, 14, 15, and 17, and as well as the new Urban Forum agenda, focusing on guiding principles 99, 100, and 101. Our vision for Port Royal, and this is the one supporting the redevelopment effort, is to create a safe and secure Port Royal with a vibrant local economy, pristine cultural heritage, protected natural environment for the long-term sustainable use by citizens and visitors for generations to come. Port Royal, just to give a context, Port Royal is located on the southern section of Kingston and the Kingston Harbor, which is the 7th largest natural harbor in the world. Its immediate area is approximately 200 acres. Prior to 1692, the town itself was 51 acres. However, it now consists of only 30 acres, with 20 being forming part of the sunken city. The redevelopment efforts extend beyond the current extent of the town and mirrors what is outlined in the red line is the Palisades Port Royal protected area. We see that as an important linkage, noting that the area is not just land, but we also have to take into consideration the very important marine, terrestrial, and ecological environment that exists within the area. So this entire area is approximately 75 square kilometers. And the area is also a designated Ramsar site, a wetland of international importance. Port Royal can be described as a city with striking historic tapestry, encapsulating its inception, influence, destruction, and reconstruction. Sporadic restoration of key areas and aspects have taken place over time, but there is still the need to create a master plan that preserves and promotes the area's history, environmental, and geographical importance. So in terms of a background, the Port of Call is a catalyst, a present-day catalyst for driving the redevelopment effort. The port utilizes a seawalk which is a floating berth technology to minimize impacts, especially on the sunken city. Additionally, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust, through the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, has applied for UNESCO designation. So we have to, these are forefront in the minds of the work we are doing. Some specific objectives for the Sustainable Port Royal 2020 plan is to develop a niche tourism market to include leisure, travel, cultural tourism, ecological tourism, to market leisure activities that highlights areas unique heritage, cultural, culinary, and natural resources, and to attract tourism investment to guarantee year-round product offering that will augment the existing community and visitor assets. I mean, this slide just gives you an idea of several development plans that have been done starting from 1964 through to 2009. And this outlines the various phases in our planning efforts. There are five phases looking at the concept development plan, which is already been produced and is available on website Port Royal 2020. Assessment and consultations, most importantly, taking the views of the residents into consideration, preparation of draft plans and small projects, plan review and sign off, and then moving into implementation. Phase one, the concept plan looked at very important issues, the environmental historical context, where we looked at the historical preservation, environmental protection, development guidelines, the infrastructure. Well, the town needs improved water distribution system. A central sewage system is also critical, as well as solid waste and other road and drainage issues that cause concerns from time to time. None of the area is flat. It's susceptible to hurricane events, which occur very often, regularly. Housing is also a critical issue to be addressed, and we're hoping that with the port of call, economic opportunities will arise and residents will benefit wholesomely from these. We're seeking to ensure that with the influx of all these activities, mobility can be sustainable, and that one of the things we'd want to see is a reduction in vehicles within the town by developing park and ride facilities, uses of reducing the amount of CO2s by using electronic vehicles as part of the whole sustainable mobility effort. The context for Port Royal takes into consideration it is always important to remember the context in which we are working. As a wetland of international importance, Port Royal is a unique ecosystem. The redevelopment area has mangroves, coral reefs, sand dunes, which is important to the survival of the town, the landmass, within a relatively small area, and provide nesting sites for birds and sea turtles. Importantly, it is a nursery for several fish species and a significant player in the provision of fish to the Kingston and St. Andrew area, and also to sustain the fisher folk and the gastronomy economy within the town itself. To capitalize on the economic and historical attributes, we propose the promotion through archaeological research digs, tours of the quays, which are offshore the southern area of southern coastline of Port Royal, educational tours through the UII Marine Lab, which is located within the town, adaptive reuse of historical attractions into entertainment spaces, ecotourism attractions, water sports, etc. Well, this slide gives an indication of how we plan to treat with the infrastructure. As you know, we looked at how we can map the necessary improvements to the water main, putting in a central sewage system, addressing the issues of drainage. One section of the town on the northern side is susceptible to high tides throughout the year. So all those issues will be addressed within the development process. Housing is also a critical issue to be dealt with, and we are focused on replacing the aging housing stock. For most of us who are not aware, Port Royal was impacted by Hurricane Charley in 1951, and as a means of redevelopment, there was the establishment of the Port Royal Brotherhood, who was agency which was put in place to oversee the issues of housing, etc. And what happened then, a series of barracks and cottages were created. Now what we are finding is that the barracks are reaching or apartments are reaching their age limits and need to be replaced. So we are focused on doing that as part of the new effort. And we'll be doing this through an effort of demolition of old, creating new structures first, where persons can relocate from one side of the town into these structures. Then we go into the town itself and demolish the dilapidated structures, and with a combination of relocation, conversion, expansion, create new housing opportunities for the existing residents. There's been emphasis on increasing the site densities and providing more habitable rooms within the area. Also to create commercial opportunities, for example, bed and breakfast, and an overall improved urban environment, and also to encourage tenant options. Right now, most of the persons within the apartments are tenants, with no or little opportunity to own those existing structures. So we're looking to change that, or see how best we can adapt a multiple option approach. As I mentioned, we're looking at having sustainable mobility within the town, establishing park and ride facilities, encouraging the use of electric vehicles. And we're seeing this also an opportunity for local residents to participate by buying and renting these vehicles to visitors to the town. Creating a walkable loop. Port Royal is a relatively small area, and this walkable loop will more or less link to the heritage and historical site as well as the communities. And of course, we want Port Royal to be, let's say, a pilot and develop as a smart city community where everything is linked. Already, the National Work Agencies has extended fiber into the town. So all is needed now is to build out that infrastructure where persons can come in, develop apps to help with the movement within the town and accessing services, etc. Now, this slide gives an idea of the, sorry, just give me a minute. This slide gives an opportunity of a walkable loop that we wish to create within the area. And as you can see, the circle more or less delineates a 15-minute walk area. And you can see the green line, which represents the loop, captures or falls within that 15-minute walk area very well. They are focused on economic opportunities, both at the macro, small and medium size, as well as the larger investors within the town, creating tour opportunities, transportation opportunities, retail, gastronomy, which the town basically is famous for now, outside of historical attractions and other infrastructure. And in terms of the Living Heritage Program, which we benefited from at the start, during the onset of the COVID, between 2020, starting in September 2020, the 5 pillars: inclusive, collaborative, productive, resilience, and eco-efficient. We have tried to link all the projects that we have developed so far. So we're looking at social support, the economic inclusion, social inclusion, housing for locals, as an example. In terms of the productive, looking at the sustainable tourism development, leverage infrastructure, entrepreneurship, and infrastructure reliability, the eco-efficiency, eco-efficient mobility, interconnected open spaces, greener buildings, and upgrading of the infrastructure. This slide more or less gives provide a context for how the program infuses these 5 heritage into the living heritage concept to develop the projects and other recommendations. We look at the material heritage, that is the physical remains of the city's defense, in terms of the forts, submerged heritage, the original intact physical remains of the town submerged by the 1692 earthquake, the immaterial heritage and cultural landscape, history, culture, food, music, people. And of course, we must remember that Port Royal was once the wickedest city on earth. So all of these things will be tied into the old program or enhanced from the IDB Living Heritage Program. And of course, critical to the whole thing, and Jack mentioned it earlier, is the whole matter of management. And what we see for Port Royal is the need to establish an enterprise management team which look at all the issues related to the town and involve all the agencies in a joint up effort. So we can deal with issues of transparency and accountability, look at issues of participation, especially of the local folk, look at the common good that is to be achieved, the diverse interests of the several stakeholders and several groups, concerns for the future. And one of the concerns is climate change, carrying capacity. And ironically, just recently, a carrying capacity study has started for the area, which will drive the recommendations of the overall master plan. Of course, the responsiveness of government and subsidies to the needs of the overall community. And finally, as mentioned, one of the important things we're doing is looking at, is looking at how, through other efforts and other projects, we can link Port Royal to downtown Kingston. And one of them is by a landward link, which is called the Kingston Harbour Walk. It's a project that is just about to get underway, but we want to make use of the abundant aesthetic value we have of the Kingston Harbour and put in place activities that will link all the areas connected by that walk together to form one continuous walk from Port Royal through to downtown Kingston. And this now becomes an attraction for the tourists that will come to the town, as well as an event space for residents locally. I'm sure I'm out of time now, so I would like to wrap up here and thank you all for your attention.
You are out of time, but you made very good use of that time. Thank you, Ronald. The case of Port Royal reveals that we are standing, when we started supporting you in this, we were standing in front of an open treasure in terms of heritage. But the challenges there were how to make it more, improve the mobility between those very valuable assets. You have heritage assets, you have natural assets, you have cultural assets, history, and so on, and make them more accessible and more comfortable to get to, and more generate connectivity in the digital sense and in the access, to complement the mobility and the accessibility. And the other big challenge is there to look at what ways can we identify to leverage private investment to complement some of the public investment that is being done by the Port Authority and a few government agencies, but in the sense that we need to basically leverage those public investments with private investment. So the projects have been very well identified, the investment projects, and the challenge there is how to create the partnerships to bring private investors to make it a lovable place, a destination of choice, and a very attractive living heritage destination. To speak now about another interesting case of living heritage, we have...
Excuse me, Gilberto.
Yes?
There's a question from the room. I don't know if you want to take the questions now or at the end.
We'll take questions at the end. We took questions in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So Trujillo, to talk about Trujillo in Peru, we have Tatiana Koppelman. Tatiana is a colleague from the Inter-American Development Bank, originally from Mexico. She is the housing and urban development specialist for Suriname and Guyana. In Guyana, she oversees the development of core houses and home improvement subsidy programs in Georgetown and the hinterlands. In Suriname, she leads the Paramaribo Urban Rehabilitation Program, which aims to revitalize the city center. Previously, Tatiana was a technical consultant for the IDB at the Panama's office, supporting the coordination and implementation of the Regional Living Heritage Program, which will be presented today. Tatiana holds a master's degree in international affairs and a master in urban planning, both from Columbia University. And she also holds a bachelor's degree in urbanism from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. To present the case of Peru, Tatiana, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes. We're short of time. I'm sorry to put that constraint. You have 15 minutes to present. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for having me. As Hilato mentioned, I will be presenting very briefly about the Living Heritage project in Trujillo. So Trujillo, there we go. Trujillo is located on the north coast of Peru in South America. And one of the our main objective of this project was really taking in the 5 pillars, which Robin previously mentioned of the Living Heritage program approach, and contextualizing them to, strengthen the urban management of the city center. So similar to what Robin did mention, we did have many challenges in terms of the limited restrictions in terms of mobility and others due to the pandemic. So as everybody knows, with data is very critical. So we had to kind of depend on other forms of digital tools such as drone imagery. And we did a heritage real estate inventory to begin our process of identifying what was not only considered monumental and what was not within the declared area, the declared historic center and its neighboring neighborhoods, but also, what was the state of this? We then also, analyzed some census data, analyzed what was the residential aspect or characteristics of this area. And as we also mentioned before, living heritage is not only the tangible heritage, but also the intangible. So for us, it was very important to do a mapping of what the different cultural manifestations and economic activities related to creativity or culture that happened within this place-based approach. And finally, we also, as Gilberto mentioned, what is critical for the success of the Living Heritage Program is having a true interest and participation of residents, stakeholders, and others. So we had a bunch of different participatory opportunities to kind of build what our vision for this would be. And as such, we had, 6 aims, six elements which made the shared vision. We wanted a heritage area which was connected by routes that prioritize pedestrian and cyclist mobility. We wanted it to be attractive for living and tourism. We wanted the cultural activities to be expressed in a free but orderly manner within the public space. We also wanted the commercial activity to be respectful, but also promote the conservation of the heritage. We wanted to have, an articulated work between the different actors involved in the urban management. And finally, we wanted the citizenry to be informed and active in caring for the city and really maintaining this heritage that they had. Out of this, we came up with 3 main lines of action, and each of these lines of action had, their general objectives. So our 3 main lines of action were one, to have a heritage zone as a living, accessible, and inclusive metropolitan urban center for residents and visitors. Then we also wanted to address the issues of, insecurity and crime that sometimes happened because of the dynamics in itself of being primarily commercial, not having much residents, etc. So we wanted a safe heritage zone to live and visit with dynamic and sustainable cultural tourism and commercial activity, which recovers and preserves its intangible heritage, but also the overall environment. And then finally, a historical center that is managed in a coordinated and participatory manner, ensuring the involvement of all actors in decision-making and that strengthens the participation of the local population in cultural life. From these, we came up with 5 main programs. So from the first strategic line of action, we had the first program, which is facilities, public space, and safety. The second one was housing and services. The third one was mobility. From our second line of action, we had commerce, culture, and tourism. And then from the third one, we had a macro governance. Each of these had different components with the strategic actions. So the way that we did this, and as we've all mentioned, this is a very place-based approach, and we wanted to really harness what are the characteristics, what is the uniqueness of these different areas. So in the case of Trujillo, we have streets which are dedicated fully to the production of leather goods, or another area which is these markets with very particular gastronomic dishes, such as potatoes, etc. So we tried to do a little bit of mapping and understanding where did this happen and what are the trends and the different opportunities and problems that we can kind of address in a cohesive manner and have, really be able to fulfill the full potential of these areas based on what their characteristics are. So we came up with these strategic intervention areas, which for the whole patrimonial or heritage area was 9 of them. And within them, they are all, grouped by according to certain activities that they may be, or, what we saw, as I mentioned, the trends. Another element that we decided to develop were what we would call hinge spaces. And these spaces are areas that are not, as you can see in the map, they're black, they're in black. They're not considered, as an official monument, but that they have a value that may not be, easily at a first glance or evident. There's something else there. Through our analysis, we identified, be it because of the activities that take place there or the opportunity that it holds to really kind of trigger the urban development or urban regeneration process that we want to do using the heritage. So I will give a brief example. For instance, we have in this part, I don't know if you can see, but on the northern western part of it, we had a former sporting complex, which had some open spaces that were underused. So we believe that those are a hinge opportunity, because through there was currently now sort of like urban dancing is the way that we gave the name of it, and that could really serve as a connector with the rest of the city in terms of bringing people towards there and kind of using that activity to kickstart other activities along or complementary to this space. So out of that, we developed the structuring project. So which were our main projects that we thought would really help us obtain this vision that we had previously established. And within these projects, there's 3 types. We have detonating projects. So these projects are, the ones that can really stimulate the new investment. They're, the Kickstarters. They're the ones that are going to get the ball moving. Then we have urgent projects, which are, what are the problems that we identified? And this project really needs to be taken care of to be able to, for the other investments to really, seek their full potential. So in this case, it could be, from issues of safety, lighting of a dark walkway, etc. We did have various different criteria according to what the area of project was. For instance, in the case of slums, of housing, if there was, indications of slumming or deteriorated housing, public space was, crime or danger, commercial with excess chaos, and, mobility, there was intense traffic, which I think that is something that happens a lot in many historic centers out in Latin America. And then finally, we had the complementary projects. And these are kinds of the ones that, would add value to the other 2 projects that we have been identifying. And these are done in 2 different priorities. And why do we say this? Because obviously, in many of our cities, there are not the tons of funds to be able to do all of these projects. So we wanted to be able to identify and have a roadmap of where, upon funding coming or different partnerships coming up, where would we want to tackle first, and where should the investments go to be able to kind of get the ball rolling. So we had 5 main structuring projects across the different areas of the heritage zone. So within them, we have the type of project, what different of these areas does it link, and what are the intervention projects, what are the components of each project, and then concrete and specific actions of each project. And what's important about these structuring projects, if you notice when you look at the map, is that these projects go and they try to link and tie together the different strategic areas that we had previously identified to give it some sort of a form of cohesion, really leveraging the individual characteristics of these areas, and weave a more of a spatial and on a larger scale than making kind of pinpointed interventions. So I'm going to just briefly talk about one that we had, which is the first one on Eje Pizarro. So this road goes from the north to the south of the heritage area. Partially, part of it is pedestrianized, and our proposal was to extend the pedestrianization to really kind of leverage the activity that is already happening along those walkways to be able to extend it further. And here we had, an urgent project for us was housing renovation. So we have one particular area which the housing was very much deteriorated. The building itself was in danger. The residents within there were obviously also at risk. So that was what we determined as an urgent project to be intervened. Then we have our kickstarting or detonating projects, which would be, as I mentioned, the extension of the pedestrianization. And then we have 2 main investments. So for this, so one would be the development of a cultural center in what used to be in the cloister of a former convent, which is located on number 6 down here in the southern part. And then also the recovery of the Union Market, which is number 9 further up. And this was the whole idea behind this is, these are 2 characteristic areas that were very underused or even abandoned that could have really kind of use and house the cultural activity that was going on around it. So what we were aiming to do here is to kind of provide an opportunity for the public officials to have a more, comprehensive or overview of how this would look from the spatial point of view, and how we can really, with little tiny intervention, these 2 interventions create an effect that would draw out throughout the whole area. And then, of course, we had many other complementary projects. From these, within that, as I mentioned, we had the detonating projects. So these ones were divided by the different programs that we had. And in our case of the detonating project, we had the pedestrianization of that main road, the Pizarro Road. And on that, we wanted to improve the different public spaces along that line, having an improvement of the street lighting so that we would address the safety. There would also be monumental wayfinding for people to understand and interpret the different heritage along the way, not only the built one, but also if there was some kind of a cultural manifestation along the way, there could be some information about that. We also explored, how this would look in a digital form and promoting that kinds of use of digital wayfinding. We then also, addressed mobility in terms of creating new circuits of routes around the area. We also then obviously, the big important part of this is the economic development. So we also wanted to talk about, the commerce and culture and tourism, and also provided some action lines and some some specific activities in terms of the diversification of the uses within it, and really trying to have a structured commercial activity, but also allowing, for that the merchants to feel as though they're being heard and that they have a way of a say in the decisions being made. So I think I'm almost running out of time, so I will be very quickly. So this was also, as I mentioned, our urgent project that we saw that would really need to be addressed first for anything else to go further. So the first thing, as I mentioned, was this house that was really in dire state. As you can see, it was falling apart. We encouraged, the usage of participation to rebuild it, and different mechanisms of regulating and how can we rebuild it through the current norms in terms of the monumental designation, and really empowering also the residents of this housing complex to be able to have a say in what they're saying, and also be prepared for the risks and vulnerability of the house and of the environment in itself. So finally, addressing this, we did have a management and financial proposal for this. And the way that we did it is that we identified, as Gilberto said, the need for different partnerships to be able to finance this. And something that is very fortunate in the Peruvian case is that there has been new developments in terms of programs and tax incentives to really incentivize the participation of not only the private sector, but also the organized civil society, or also universities, regional governments, etc. So the way that we programmed this is that we have our first partner, who would be the local government, but then also identified where would be the budget to which they could access to be able to implement these different actions that we had proposed. And this was very efficient because by handing this, working with the government in this way, it was very, very valuable for them to see that it wasn't all a burden. There are different ways and different new forms of partnerships to really be able to kind of develop these projects and look at the potential that these may have. So that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tatiana. Very, very thorough application there of the living heritage methodology in Trujillo, showing a systematic approach to reveal assets when and where it is difficult to reveal the assets. The idea of this hinge or hidden or not clear heritage assets and bring them to value, to market, to use, is a very, very useful and interesting notion. And also, of course, the need to finance properly the interventions, identify the actions, but also clearly identify how to pay for it, how to finance, how to make things happen, how to bring actions to reality. We have only 15 minutes for a Q&A, and my understanding is that there is a question from the audience in the room. So I will give you the floor for the question. Identify yourself, and make the question in 1 minute, and tell us to whom are you directing the question.
Okay. Good afternoon. The name is Carol Archer, and I'm directing the question to Ron. When I listened to the last presentation and to Robin's presentation, I noticed there was a common thread in that the engagement of the residents, and two, identifying and addressing some of the immediate issues. We saw that in Spicetown and in Trujillo. Ron, I'm wondering to what extent and what method you use to engage, and how do you intend to go about addressing some of the immediate problems facing Port Royal before we start with the other, long-term interventions that you're proposing. And for me, the immediate issues facing that whole area: garbage collection, solid waste management, and crime. I've not heard in your presentation how UDC intend to address those two fundamental issues. And until we address those, we could have all the charging stations and all the, long walks. Persons won't come.
That's a biggie. Ronald.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Archer. I hope everyone is hearing me. There is a bit of instability in the internet. I hope I'm being heard by everyone. Well, let me proceed. In terms of engagement, the UDC, as I indicated earlier, the approach we've used is a collective stakeholder engagement approach, and supporting the UDC is the Social Development Commission, who carried out interventions in discussions, carried out surveys on behalf of the corporation, had focus group meetings with the residents, developed an action plan coming out of those focus group meetings. It also is to continue that engagement by carrying out business assessment surveys, from which another action plan will be developed. We're fully aware that some of the issues that have arisen. I believe in terms of priority, what tops the list for the residents in Port Royal is housing. Internally and with agencies, MEGJC, the Brotherhood, we have started discussions in terms of developing strategies to deal with those situations. One of the issues overall with Port Royal is that land is finite. So in terms of treating with, and where land is not finite, then there's a threat of natural disasters. So we have to ensure that we put together proposals, especially for housing, that deals with those issues. As I mentioned in my presentation, one of the things is looking at higher densities, looking at providing housing in a better condition that they are now. That is, largely most of the apartments are single room apartments. We're looking at how best we can accommodate a mix of housing solutions that caters for or provides one or other multiple rooms options, whether from 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units. I mean, in terms of issues of garbage collection, we have engaged with the National Solid Waste Management Authority. One of the things they would want to introduce is the issue of recycling as a project. We need to follow to see how successful that is. In terms of crime, you point to crime being a major issue, but from our interrogation and meeting with the residents, interviews, discussions, and meeting with the residents, and even from the surveys, crime is not a critical factor for the town. Port Royal is more or less can be deemed an isolated or a special case community where the internal persons are very guarded of strangers coming in, and that improves the security for them and keep wrongdoers out of the town. So we're encouraged by that. But we see housing and coming from the residents as a critical factor to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. I think in the case of Port Royal, just to complement your answer, not allowing those factors to become an issue in heritage destinations is the challenge. Fortunately, cases like Spikestown or Port Royal, we saw that the crime situation, the safety situation is an asset. It's not a liability. However, when you develop and you grow these heritage destinations and you bring more people different hours of the day, 24 hours and so on, the risks of these issues of engagement with the community, solid waste, safety and others may become issues. But as you pointed out, they are not heavy in the case of Port Royal. However, they are very relevant in downtown locations worldwide. So are issues to always keep in mind. I don't know if there are other questions from the audience that you would like to make.
At this time, no, Gilberto.
Okay, in that case, I have questions for the panelists. We only have like 4 more minutes, so I will direct the questions to very quickly to the panelists. For Joseph. Joseph, who is your main private sector partner in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to heritage?
You hear me clearly, right? Perfect. So actually, the private sector, we engage them based on particular projects. So everyone would be engaged at some point or the other. So we don't have one main private sector person or group that would facilitate the heritage preservation. So it's project-based, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Robin, for you, why did you choose the Business Improvement District as the sort of main vehicle for capitalizing heritage investments in Spikestown?
I think the primary reason is that there's no longer any local government authority in the case of Barbados. There used to be, but there no longer is. And therefore you have sectoral interventions, national interventions, but no one looking after the town as a product. And so in the absence of that, and in the absence of trying to go for a more ambitious set of reforms that have not been analyzed, certainly not by us, in terms of governance, we thought a case-specific approach that would build upon the logic and the practice of the Spikestown Task Force would be the special business district would be a natural extension of that without requiring any sort of fundamental change in terms of legislation.
Thank you. For Ronald, we work together with Port Royal in identifying the assets and developing the actions and even an investment plan. So which in your situation is would you say the most important public-private partnership that which one is the top priority partnership with the private sector to develop Port Royal going forward?
Ms. Gilberto, I would say that building on the existing hotel investor within the town is one of the critical partnerships that needs to develop going forward. It provides employment. It also provides an opportunity through that hotel development to bring visitors to the town outside of what would come by the cruise ships. And also the partnerships with the cruise shipping industry is critical. We know that it is a cruise shipping or the development of the port of call, which has caused this new catalyst for development in Port Royal. And I think building upon that, encouraging partnerships or increased partnerships between the Port Authority of Jamaica on our side, or the face with the cruise shipping industry, the local residents, to ensure that there's equal opportunities for town folk persons or royalists, as they're called, to be involved in that process and not for them to be excluded. I think based on the findings of the survey, that's one of the critical things that the royalists want to see, that they're part of this process. And already some of them have been trained to be a part of that process. So excluding them from that process will be devastating to the old port of call and redevelopment of the town. So those are two critical upfront partnerships that we'd want to see develop moving forward.
Thank you, Ronald. Very clear. Your message that it's not only about financials, it's also about solid partnerships to facilitate and to make possible heritage progress and investment. Tatiana, for you, the question, you were very successful in that case of Trujillo, identifying hidden assets, identifying intangible assets. What would be your main recommendation for other locations in the Caribbean, particularly, where those assets are difficult to find, difficult to identify? What is the key thing that we should do to reveal those assets?
So I would say that a key part of this was having a lot of the citizen or public participation, you know, that really gave shed light on activities or elements that were not easily visible or were not in our everyday conscious as being something that was an asset, being intangible or tangible. So I think definitely having a very strong participation process and engaging with especially the people who not only live there, but also use it and frequent the space is critical in being able to identify these hidden assets.
Thank you. I think there is a very positive note to end this session, this panel of the Caribbean Urban Forum. A lot of work to do, but fortunately, a lot of work, very good work done that will serve to other locations, other cities, other heritage, other living heritages to be identified and leveraged properly. So I want to thank you for your contributions. I want to thank the audience for being with us for a significant amount of time, and I wish you safe deliberations for the rest of the forum. And thank you for your interest in this topic of living heritage in the Caribbean. Thank you very much, and have a very wonderful weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could indulge you, we have one last session. We could use your interest and your questions if you're able to stay. I'll remind you that Usain Bolt always ran the last leg of the 4x100.